The overwhelming number of deaths, over 75%, occurred in people who had at least 4 comorbidities.
Justice Sonia Sotomayor used the opportunity to show that she knows absolutely nothing at all.
Holy cow, the Supreme Court, member of the Supreme Court says something that's so wrong, it's kind of scary. The CDC is finally saying something that we've been saying for literally months, maybe if not years, and also school closures. We got to talk about that. All that and more coming up on this episode of Daily Caller Live. My name is Jobob. Daily Caller Live starts right now.
3, 2, 1.
Here we go!
Might be the only brown guy on earth named Jobob.
That is actually their name, Jobob.
Live from a snazzy hotel room in downtown Phoenix, Arizona. My name is Jobob. This is Daily Caller Live. On today, it is January 11th, the year of our Lord 2022. We've got some really interesting stuff. The CDC is finally saying stuff that I think we've been saying for months, again, if not years. SCOTUS member, Justice, gets something crazy wrong. And there's also a quote that came out during the whole vaccine mandate thing that I want to bring up that's actually way more scary than all of that. And I got to talk school closures, especially in places like Chicago, which finally reached a deal yesterday, but kids aren't going back until tomorrow. I don't understand why that is, but that is how it is. Got to get to this. This is the first things first. SCOTUS Justice gets something very, very wrong. So this happened last week. We're kind of playing catch up, but it also is getting more and more traction now. I think it was kind of said, I don't want to say it was said offhandedly, but it was said kind of in the mix of a whole bunch of other things, especially regarding vaccine mandates. Over the weekend, people started picking it up. Tucker ran with it last week. You saw him at the beginning of this show, and we'll play a clip from the Tucker show of a quote from Justice Sonia Sotomayor misstating something so vastly wrong that you kind of are trying to figure out, is she lying or does she not know? Because I feel like as a Supreme Court justice, she's obviously of higher average intelligence than your normal. She's probably smarter than me. How can you be this wrong? Let me play this clip and we'll discuss it on the other side. Watch this.
Justice Sonia Sotomayor used the opportunity to show that she knows absolutely nothing at all. Listen to her describe the effect of the virus on young people.
We have hospitals that are almost at full capacity with people severely ill on ventilators. We have over 100,000 children, which we've never had before, in serious condition, and many on ventilators.
So that is from Tucker Show. Again, played a clip of Justice Sonia Sotomayor saying things that are, let's break this down by the quote. The first part of the quote, she says, hospitals are almost at full capacity. Again, this is something we've been saying constantly for the last however many months, years at this point. Hospitals operate at almost full capacity. There's no reason for a hospital to sit completely empty. And if they did, they'd probably not operate that hospital anymore. The whole point of hospitals is to treat patients, and the idea of treating patients is that you want to treat as many patients as possible. So your goal is to be at mostly full capacity. Now, the good news, especially from everywhere that's reporting on it, we talked about 2 weeks ago, the reports out of South Africa, which was the first to be introduced to Omicron, not having super severe death rate spikes, like everybody on your left-wing media has said. So that first part of her statement is maybe technically true, but kind of irrelevant. It's like saying, well, in today's news, the Angels lost. I'm an Angels fan, Southern California, and they lose frequently. It's kind of like, yeah, we know that's not a real thing. But then she said something that is absolutely just not true. And I've been trying to figure out if it's a lie or she's just wrong. I have to believe, and maybe I'm naive for thinking this, but I have to believe our Supreme Court justices are above the political fray to try and dive into politics. I know RBG kind of did that sort of thing. Some of the lefty justices, maybe even some of the more righty justices back in the past have delved into the more political angle. But the Supreme Court is supposed to be apolitical, which leaves me with the question of, okay, did Justice Sotomayor say something wrong on purpose for political purposes? Or did she say something wrong because she isn't quite understanding how things are working, or she takes in her news entirely from MSNBC and CNN? What she said, if you missed the clips, was claims that this is from Daily Caller, Sonia Sotomayor claims that 100,000 children are in serious condition with COVID, or many that are on ventilators. That's not true at all. There haven't been 100,000 children in the hospital because of COVID. Now, are there some increasing hospitalization rates of kids in the hospital with COVID? Yes, but again, there's no delineation between what is with and what is because. And also, the 100,000 children number, which she said right now there are 100,000 children in the hospital, is just dead wrong. Brett Baer had CDC Director Rochelle Walensky on, was asking her about the question and gave a more accurate number. Listen to this.
The number's not 100,000. It's roughly 3,500 in hospitals now.
Yes, there are, and in fact, what I will say is, while pediatric hospitalizations are rising, they're still about 15-fold less than hospitalizations of our older age demographics.
Do you have a
So Brett Baer says they're about 3,500, so 3.5%. Sonia Sotomayor, Supreme Court Justice, missed that statistic by 96.5%. How that's scary wrong. And again, my question is it on purpose for political benefit because she believes in vaccines and all that sort of stuff? She's trying to inflate the numbers, which is scary. Again, the Supreme Court tries to be as apolitical as possible. Or is she just that misinformed given your media concept? And I don't really know. Again, being a Supreme Court justice, she's probably decently smart. Maybe I don't disagree with her, but she's not a dumb lady. She should know better than that, especially to submit it into the actual record of Supreme Court hearings. The Washington Post, again, not a conservative-leaning news outlet, gave the Supreme Court justice 4 Pinocchios, which is the most amount of Pinocchios. The fact checker, Glenn Kessler over there, again, has a pretty lefty look at the world and tries everything he can, and the Washington Post does everything they can to hold up more liberal policies. Even they were like, yeah, that's very, very wrong. 4 Pinocchios from the Washington Post. So the bottom line is this. At what point, let me rephrase that. People that listen to MSNBC and CNN. Now, does Fox News, does OANN, do all of these other news outlets have perspectives? Yes, they do. But the objective is to get some sort of true numbers. CNN and MSNBC just lie about stuff. And it seems, if I'm to believe that Sonia Sotomayor is not taking a political stance here, it would seem that they're just making stuff up and people are just buying it all the way up to Supreme Court status, which is worrisome. Justice Kagan also said something ridiculous, and I feel like this is not getting nearly as enough play as it should. This quote from, again, a Supreme Court justice is worrisome. Justice Kagan said, "The government is paying for the medical services, so they have the right to dictate details of those services." That's really not being talked about anywhere in your media, but I picked that quote up from Twitter, and Kagan saying that the government is paying for it, therefore they have the right to set the details. Hashtag death panels, hashtag Sarah Palin, hashtag I think she was right. That sounds exactly like what that is. And this is the problem that I think a lot of your more conservative-leaning folks have with government-run anything. Is people who want government-run everything think that the government should be in charge of how that thing works, which is not a good thing. The government is not good at things. Give me an example of something that the government is good at and has no waste. Things that come to mind are the DMV, the VA, even the best institutions that we have. And again, this is just from a strictly a numbers thing. We have the best and greatest military on the planet. But even all of my friends in the military will tell me that, yeah, there's quite a bit of fat that could be trimmed. So with that being said, the argument for the government handling more things doesn't seem to be a very good argument. And Justice Kagan saying the government is paying for it, therefore they have the right to dictate all of the details, is worrisome. We'll leave that there, but I think it's a good segue into this whole schools thing. If you haven't been paying attention, schools in a lot of places around the country, Chicago specifically, they're kind of what I want to focus on, have been out of school for the last week, while the teachers have just been on strike. I think like 13% of teachers in Chicago have shown up for work the last couple days, which is not good. The school system, look, I have a lot to say about this. Before we do, though, I gotta tell you about this. You know what's going on with prices. I don't know. What are gas prices? Give me in the comment section. I know I've asked this constantly, but I'm trying to at least anecdotally gauge what gas prices are around the country. For me, they are going up substantially. The gas station at my house, when we moved to this house, was like $3.30. Now it is like $4.60. Huge increase. I am feeling it at the pump. I know you probably are. I'm also feeling it in the grocery store. I'm feeling it in my wallet is where it is. And the worst thing that I can do for myself is have cash on hand. And unfortunately, that's just what's happening. So how do you protect yourself? I've been in precious metals for a long time. And when I say a long time, I mean like 15 years. Ever since I was in college, I was precious metals, gold, 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 gold. And now it's all making sense because the best way to protect your cash savings is to invest it in gold. You might be thinking, how the heck do I do that? I don't know anything about buying gold. Do I get a truckload of gold just dumped at my house? No, there's other ways to do it. And the other ways you do it are you go to our friends at Birch Gold by texting JOBOB to 989898. And you can get a free, no obligation, no cost pamphlet that tells you everything you need to know about investing in gold. If you have an IRA, if you have a 401k, you can transfer those to a gold-backed IRA through Birch Gold. You can buy physical gold from them. You can do all kinds of things to protect your savings with precious metals through Birch Gold. And the best way you can learn how to do that is text Jobob to 989898. Get a free, no obligation, no cost packet. Seriously, this is more out of concern for friends because I think we're friends at this point. Do it. Help protect your savings by texting JOBOB to 989898. To get back to this, I think the Supreme Court justice thing was a good lead into schools. As it would seem, Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor thinks that there's a huge problem with kids and their reaction to COVID. Of course, there is not. But if you were to think that, it's a little bit more understanding why you would have teachers in schools that are doing the things that they're doing regarding not showing up to work. One of the biggest strikes that have happened in the last couple of weeks, I don't know if you've heard about this, is in Chicago. The teachers district the teachers unions in Chicago voted overwhelmingly to not show up to work because of the rising cases of the Omicron variant that is more like the Omacold. Not a lot of people are dying from that, which is great. This is all a good thing. And at the beginning, there were scientists and epidemiologists saying that, yeah, eventually these things morph and the viruses want to stay alive, so they don't want to kill all of their hosts, and generally they morph into something that seems a little bit less terrible, which exactly seems like what the Omicron is doing. But nevertheless, if you watch CNN or MSNBC and you just look at cases, which cases are a completely meaningless freaking number, but if you just watch those those channels and you just look at cases, you might have the same fear that Justice Sonia Sotomayor have, regardless of how wrong that fear is. But nevertheless, schools in Chicago have been closed for the last, I think, 4 school days. So like the last weeks, Chicago schools have not shown up. I wrote a little piece talking about this because there are 3 major reasons as to why schools should not be closed, especially after the schools fought so hard across the country. The American Federation of Teachers, all of your big teacher unions fought so hard to keep kids out of school. The first reason, and the most foremost reason, especially if you're one of those lefties that wants everybody to get the COVID shot, especially if you're that, shouldn't that protect you? Isn't that the whole point of getting the COVID shot? If you're on that side of, I need to be protected at all costs, Isn't that the whole point of the COVID shot? It's been openly available and readily accessible to anybody around the country who wants to get it. So I would imagine teachers in Chicago either have it or don't want it. In which case, show up to work. Doesn't it work? Isn't it safe and effective? Isn't that what I've been hearing constantly throughout the entire media world? Well, that's reason number one. The second reason that schools need to be open is we have overwhelming data at this point that is horribly damaging to kids to keep them home. This is the most maddening part to me, that the huge disadvantage that some kids are facing by being kept at home because of government policy and government response to COVID. Last year, suicide rates saw a 22% spike in ER trips to potential suicides by children aged 12 to 17 in the summer of 2020 compared to, this is 2020, compared to 2019. Suicide rates have exploded across kids, which is terrible. And I honestly don't want to keep talking about it very much because it is that maddening. The teachers over the last 18 months, and this is not necessarily the teachers, because I know my mom's a teacher. I know so many great teachers that would do whatever they needed to do for these kids. What I generally have a problem is with the unions. The unions used kids as a political pawn to get more and more money for their pension funds, probably, and used kids as pawn and kept them home despite the 25% increase in suicide attempts. Just horrible. Which leads us into our third reason, money. Here's something that I feel like none of your mainstream media is talking about. Obviously, you've got people talking about, well, if the shot works, you should be in the classroom. And then obviously the horrible destruction to kids. But as a fiscal conservative and as a person that thinks the government should do less things because they're bad at doing pretty much everything, my concern is the money. $130 billion went to schools through all of the different COVID relief packages. Even if you break that down to each school, that's about $1.3 million per school. Why did they get that money? Well, it was to keep schools safe and open. So after $130 billion of federal money coming into the schools, and for the sole purpose of keeping them open during COVID or keeping them as safe as possible, after $130 billion of taxpayer money, you're telling me you didn't use it effectively and still have to shut down because teachers are scared of the Omicron? That's what really gets me, again, as a person who wants our government to use its money wisely. Chicago, supposedly, this is according to the Daily Wire, Chicago earmarked $32 million to ARP, money for comprehensive, culturally responsible curriculum, which is CRT. So not only did they not keep the classroom safe, they also put $32 million into racial equity programs in the schools in Chicago. Not to mention, when you're talking about risk to the kids, you have your super, super woke side that is all about diversity and inclusion and equity, which is a terrible term and nobody should use the word equity, but they're super concerned about that sort of stuff. Guess who gets hurt the most by kids staying home from schools? Minority kids, less fortunate kids. Those kids are disproportionately disadvantaged by teachers deciding that, well, we can't come into work. Teachers' unions deciding that. That's that. We got to get to this. At this point, at some point, we all should be doing a victory lap of sorts in a lot of different ways. This is interesting. We saw Dr. Fauci talking about hospitalization rates. Well, that with COVID, not necessarily of COVID. Yeah, dude, we freaking know. We agree with you on that. So there's that. Now, CDC Director Rochelle Walensky said something even more interesting that a lot of us, again, have been saying for the last 2 years. But before we get to that, I got to tell you one more time about protecting your savings. You like gold? Everybody likes gold. I have a gold chain necklace. I like some gold teeth. I think that would boost my rap career. But there's a lot of people that like gold. Your wife likes gold. I guarantee you, your wife, your girlfriend, your fiance, whatever it is, they like gold. And you know why? Because people like gold. People in general like gold. So because we know that you like it, she likes it, everybody likes it, why not invest in it, especially at a time with inflation going through the roof and you need to protect your savings one way or another? Simple answer. Gold, precious metals. It's been the most sustainable protection against inflation. It's against government inflation throughout the history of time, not even just recently, through the entire history of the beginning of monetary trade. Precious metals have been the one standard that pretty much everybody agrees with holds value. So you need to protect your savings against government sabotaging the value of the US dollar. The best way you can learn how to do that is by texting our friends at Birch Gold, sending JOBOB to 989898 and getting a free, no obligation, no risk pamphlet that tells you everything you need to know about investing in gold. And of course, you can buy physical gold from them, and I have some physical gold in an undisclosed location. But also, if you have an IRA, if you have a 401k, if you have a retirement plan, you can get your retirement plan transferred into a gold-backed IRA with our friends at Birch Gold. You can learn how to do that by texting JOBOB to 989898. Now, even if you do text JOBOB to 989898 and you get the pamphlet and you read through it and you go, that's not for me. Fine. I would imagine that you're going to be convinced that yes, you need to do this, but there's no obligation is what I'm saying. What I'm saying here is there's no risk, no obligation. You don't owe them nothing. They don't owe you nothing. This is just an informational piece to get you to see how gold can protect your savings against the government. I'll say that. From sabotaging the US dollar. So text JOBOB to 989898. Protect your savings today. Getting back to this. This is Rochelle Walensky on ABC This Week saying something we all knew already for a very long time, and now they're finally talking about it out loud. Check this out.
The overwhelming number of deaths, over 75%, occurred in people who had at least 4 comorbidities. So really, these are people who were unwell to begin with.
What? People who were unwell to begin with are more risk to COVID than other people? Holy cow. Not to mention, with a survivability rate of like 99.98%, especially if you're under 45, what she's saying now is that number goes down even further if you have even 3 of the comorbidities. The CDC is finally coming out and saying that Walensky was on Good Morning America discussing, this is from the Daily Caller, discussing a study released Friday by the CDC, which found 77.8% of vaccinated people who contracted COVID-19 died because they had 4 or more comorbidities. We've been saying this for months. This is why I'm sarcastically, snarkily responding to this ridiculous report from the CDC. Yes, we all know if you have comorbidities, you're much more of a risk. So then the question becomes again, why, Miss CDC Director, Mr. Dr. Fauci, Mr. Biden, all of your super lefty mandate lockdown politicians, why then are you trying to mandate something on people under the age of 45 with 0 comorbidities, which effectively, according to the CDC's own data, would be much less at risk for the COVID-19, the CCP bat fever? I'm curious, what would the reason be? Because at this point, if you're factoring in this data, it goes from 99.998% to like 99.9999999% survivability rate, especially when you factor in the comorbidities, especially when you factor in the younger ages. A report released by the World Obesity Foundation Federation in March found that COVID-19 death rates were 10 times higher with a country of largely overweight individuals in the adult population. CNN reported it at the time. The network was criticized in early January, CNN was, for pointing out that losing weight can reduce the risk of the effects of COVID-19. Again, if only somebody had been saying this for the last 2 years. The only reason I bring this sort of stuff up is at what point do we all kind of do our victory lap of we've told you. And also, I'm trying to figure out, seriously, especially with this platform and the other platforms that I've got to be able to push messaging out, what is the best and most effective way to tell people about this? Because at this point, we're so segmented off into our camps, and now I'm going to go on this political diatribe. But at this point, we're so segmented into our camps, I would like people to be able to see this. People need to see the fact that, hey, there have been people saying this for months, and now the CDC is finally admitting to things. Now Dr. Fauci is finally admitting to things. As a person with a wide reach and a platform, I would love to figure out a better way to get my more liberal-leaning friends to at the very least, pay attention. Because all I want them to do is just see this sort of stuff, and they can come to their own conclusions. I would imagine they'd come to the conclusions of, oh yeah, the government isn't trying to do what's best in our interest. But they can come to their own conclusions. That's fine with me. But again, at what point do we all start doing a victory lap of neener, I told you so? I don't know. We shouldn't do that. We're better than that. But that's the bottom line. I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of this in the coming couple months of the CDC and Dr. Fauci and all of your super, super woke medical advisors that were super, super into this thing at the very beginning, walking things back and kind of going, oh, well, we knew this all the time, but we thought that the society should be safe from their own ignorance, which is a dumb way of doing things. That's going to do it for us today. Appreciate you guys taking the time to check us out, stick along, and talk about schools and all that sort of stuff. I'm sure we're going to have some interesting stuff tomorrow. I will be on the TPUSA live couch later on today out here in Phoenix, Arizona. So check that out if you got the chance. Also, if you haven't given me a follow on any of your social media platforms, this is the best way for us to stay connected, stay engaged. Just follow me literally any of the social media platforms. Jobob, Getter, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Not many Jobobs out there. Should be pretty easy to find me. So you can do that. We can keep these conversations going. And really, though, I get a lot of information from you guys sending me stuff. So Jobob, anywhere on social media, you can find me and we can hang out via the interwebs. That's going to do it for us today. Appreciate you taking the time to tune in. We'll be right back here with a brand new show tomorrow. If you missed any part of this segment, if you missed any segment of the show, you can rewatch on Facebook, you can rewatch on YouTube, you can rewatch on Twitter, you can go download the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Keep up with us day to day. We'll be right back here, same time, same place tomorrow, 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern. We'll see you then. God bless America.